This is the Troutbitten podcast.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Troutbitten.
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 Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout. Wild trout. This is Troutbitten.
This is the Troutbitten podcast, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swantowski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of Troutbitten.com. All right, friends, we're here to talk about floating down a river. The Troutbitten guys are here with me, and we're going to talk about why we like boats, how floating is so much different than wading, and how some opportunities are uniquely available while you're floating, and how others are kind of shut off, too. I don't think this will be much of a technical conversation. We just want to tell some stories about floating, maybe discuss how our fishing approach changes, and really how a lot of other things change too. So this Troutbitten project, meaning all of Troutbitten, is very specific, right? Troutbitten is about fly fishing for trout, usually wild trout, in rivers, and honestly, mostly while wading. Sure, we've talked about floating, and I've written a handful of articles that apply to boat tactics, but almost all of our podcast conversations, all the articles, and all the videos are tightly focused on wading rivers for trout. Yes, the skills often transfer to floating, but some don't. So last week, Matt suggested this would be a good topic to build a conversation around, and I think he's right. What changes when we float? What do we like? What don't we like? What kind of water can we float? Is there any water we should maybe not be floating? And why do we float a river in the first place? That's our topic. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Ready.
All right, so I have Matt Grobe here with me tonight. Just say hi, bud.
Set sail.
Set sail, the sloop John B.
That's for you, Slooper.
We always change our screen names here. So what's your screen name? Set sail, sloop John
Set
B.
sail.
We haven't talked about Sloop for a while. Sloop used to be in every podcast. What happened?
I don't know, but I've been fishing a lot with him.
Is that right?
Yeah. He's getting after
You
it.
catch some suckers?
Nah, whitefish.
The other day,
Montana
actually,
whitefish?
the other day he texted me. He really hit up the whitefish good.
Is that what he said?
Getting deep. Snagging him in the head.
Yeah. I don't know if he was snagging, but he was getting into the whitefish, and sometimes that just happens.
You had him dialed in.
Slooper. What do you think about having Slooper in for the airing of grievances episode?
That'd be good.
You
I
think he
think
has
he-
grievances?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Good.
I mean, it might even be a little shocking
Mm.
because you wouldn't, think, oh man, why is Sloop going off? Sloop's going off.
I'm
I'm gonna
be
go
fine.
watch him. I don't need him with a bullseye on his back around Bozeman.
All right. Okay, so maybe we'll get Sloop in for... So airing of grievances should be probably the second to the last episode of this season. Okay, I was with a client the other day, and he said the airing of grievances was his favorite. We're his favorite episodes. I said, you're not the only one. He said, we call it trout bitching.
Oh, that's good.
Trout bitching.
Oh my gosh.
I said, that's a good subtitle for the airing of grievances.
I haven't heard that before.
Anyway, I don't like to end the whole season, on kind of that negative tone. So we always kind of soften it up with some stories and happy stuff after. Austin, do you have any stories and happy things from your local river? Austin Dando, in recent memory, besides losing your phone.
I was gonna say that's the most recent memory.
Good job, idiot.
I was with a client yesterday, new friend Dave from Massachusetts, and towards the end of the day, we were on a sulfur hatch, and I'd just taken a picture of a fish that he caught, and I went to go put my phone back in my wader pocket. I wasn't looking, and what I thought was my pocket was actually the outside of my waders, touching the inside of my rain jacket. I put it in there, zipped it, took a step, and I heard it just fall into the creek.
Shoop.
And I didn't see it drop. I just heard the sound. Immediately, I knew what it was. And Dave spent 20 minutes looking for it with me, with our faces stuck to the water as much as we could. And, a phone in a black case and moving water that's a couple feet deep. Just couldn't find it.
Isn't that
That
crazy?
stinks.
Like,
Yeah.
it's there. I did that to Josh's microphone.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, true.
It's there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that river isn't all that colored up right now either.
No, you could actually see the bottom pretty well.
Ah,
Had a little
that's
bit of
terrible.
a tint, but if you concentrated, you could see the bottom. And there's just no making it out. And just surrendered. So after that happened, I said, all right, Dave, we can't go out on that note. I said, you got to catch me another fish. And he caught the nicest fish of the day. And then we walked out. It was awesome. Yeah, it was really fun.
You switched to an Android phone now?
No, I'm back to my iPhone 7. I'm not lying.
I like how you say that.
Surprised it even turned on.
I know, right? Except I lost the last year of my memory because I refused to use a cloud.
Are you one of those guys that's afraid that like everybody's listening to you and watching you?
Yeah, remember we've been through this?
Mm-hmm. Just calling you out again.
Yeah. I mean, not that it would make any difference.
You know they're listening to you right now.
I know. That's the thing. My reasoning is completely irrational.
I know. That's
the other part is they only give you 5 gigabytes, and I'm also not paying for that. So
that's fair. My buddy Steve. Oh, I can't say his name. I better not say his last name. But my buddy Steve, Dick Jones, the illustrator for that's his name, right?
He doesn't want you to say anything,
right? Dick Jones is the illustrator for Troutbitten. He hasn't done anything for about a year and a half, but. If you look back, definitely you'll see Dick Jones as the as the credit for all these illustrations, and that's Steve. I won't say his last name because he wants no record on the internet of himself. He wants no pictures of himself, nothing. He wants no trace. And I'm like, come on, man. So anyway, he needed a pseudonym, so it's Dick Jones. That's his name. We should get Dick Jones on the podcast. Nobody would see him.
Oh, put a mask on him.
Oh my gosh.
If we do the video.
Put my live podcast voice on him.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Hey, let's do a couple questions. So we're going to talk about boats, but before that, let's do a couple questions. This first one is from Stephanie Sheridan. I actually guided Stephanie and Mike last week, and we had a great time. She sent me this question a couple days later, and it's a good one that I don't think we've ever talked about before. Austin, will you read this one, please?
Yep. Stephanie writes, "Hi, Dom and the rest of the Troutbitten crew. I have a question for you all. What is the proper etiquette when you find gear along a stream that was obviously lost or forgotten? I'm talking about good stuff like nets, and fly boxes, or fly rods.
Good stuff.
My instinct is to leave it in the case the owner retraces their steps. But then I wonder, what if they have no idea where they lost it? Or worse, what if someone finds it and decides to keep it? Not sure there is a perfect answer for this, but I'm curious about what you all do. Backstory, I dropped my net at a very popular fishing spot yesterday evening, and I didn't realize it until we unpacked the car. When I got back early this morning, it was still there. I got lucky for sure. Thanks for providing countless hours of education and entertainment. I can't wait to see what the future holds for Troutbitten, Stephanie."
That's so nice. Stephanie and Mike were one of my favorite guide trips of the year so far of this spring. What do you guys think, though? That is a neat question, right? You find it. I've said for a long time, if you fish long enough, you're going to find everything you need out there.
River beers.
I always try to put myself in the person that lost its position. Like if I lost the fly box that I tied, think of how that would make you feel if you misplaced it. So I typically, depending on the area, if there's a strong, forum base out there, I may grab it or take it to a fly shop. Like if I've grabbed stuff and taken it to a fly shop to see if they take it to communicate to the individual. That's been kind of my approach. If it's a rod, a lot of times you actually can call that manufacturer with a serial number. Our boy Sloop John B had a good story. He literally caught a rod last year and called up Sage, and Sage gave him the owner's name, and he tracked him down via Facebook and met the guy in Bozeman. He was actually a doctor in Billings. So
never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things if you put your mind to it. I feel like you can get it back to the owner if you try.
Never would have thought of that. Yeah, taking it to a fly shop, I understand that. Austin,
yeah.
What do you think?
I know I see this a lot where someone would say Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media outlet.
Yeah.
I found this net. All right. You might even post a picture of the product. If you can tell me where it was when you lost it. So, you don't want anybody lying and trying to get stuff out of you for free, but if they can somehow prove to you that they know where you found their objects, that's a good way to do it. If you go back to the same access often enough, you could even put something on the bulletin if that's there. Yeah. Say lost rod, blah, blah, blah. email, phone, or something.
Like a placard at the parking area or something.
Yeah. So if you do go back, because it is likely someone could pick it up and take it home, if you want to try to keep it for safety and then just put a posting on some sort of bulletin, maybe at the access, if there is one, when they return, they may see that and then they can get in touch, or take it to the fly shop and tell them, call the fly shop.
So am I a jerk for just like taking the net that I found 2 weeks ago? Let me explain. Everything's conditional.
Troutbitten discount.
Everything's conditional, right? Everything in fishing, maybe everything in life is like, well, I don't know, sometimes, and this and that. I found a net. It was high water. The high water had been about 3 weeks ago. I found a net. It was, it had been there for 3 weeks. You know what I'm saying? There were leaves in it. There was mud all over it. And I saw like the handle sticking out of a brush pile. Nobody was coming back to get
in a hand. Net. Dom just grabbed the net.
I found it.
Give me that. Let go.
There was an arm.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Got the fish pond native net.
I took it. It was a fish pond net. I took it. Anybody out there, if you can identify it.
Yeah.
Well, you've lost like 3 of those, so maybe you get one back once in a while.
I've lost 2 over the years. Whatever. I'm like, that's nobody is coming back to get that. That you could tell it had been there for a few weeks, put it that way. So I took it, and it's mine now.
So that's what you tell yourself. This has been here for a while.
Know what I'm saying.
It's past. Well, they could have came back weeks ago, and they haven't. Yeah. So somebody better use it.
I'll make this worse. I was on. Bleep that out. And I think I was fishing with Bill. And that one had clearly been there for like 6 months. I mean, the net bag was kind of starting to deteriorate, but those carbon frames, it was another fish pond net. They're not going to deteriorate. But it had been there for a long time. And it was, again, like buried under a rock and mud on it. I'm not leaving it there. I'm taking it. It's mine now. Finders keepers, baby. So I now, and it was long-handled as well. So I now have 2 boat nets because I don't need a long-handled net when I'm guiding. Did you know that? I have no interest in a long-handled net when I'm guiding.
But it looks so cool.
Well, I'm the outlier. I don't want it. Anyway, but to contrast it, that maybe make up for myself for taking those nets. I'm going to say 3 or 4 times I've run across full rods, just rods, reels, lines strung up, leaning against a tree somewhere kind of near the water, but there's nobody out there. It's like Wednesday.
Oh, those are mine. Yeah, I left those there.
Yeah, well, I didn't take them, is my point. Because they hadn't,
sure,
they didn't look like they had been there very long. I could have taken a rod and a reel and a line. I was like, nah, it looks like somebody just forgot them. And I mean it. There was like nobody around. 3 or 4 times. And I'm not talking about like a Saturday where there's 5 guys in a parking lot and there's 2 guys in sight upstream. No. I'm talking about there's nobody out there. It's the middle of the week. You could tell that somebody forgot about them, and maybe they even forgot where they left them. But I figure that person's going to come back. I certainly would. You got a $1,500 investment right there. I don't know. So I don't take everything, but I'll take some things if it's been there a while.
We should have the next phase of the Troutbitten project will be the hidden camera on the banks of one of your favorite streams and just have like a super fly box and just see what happens and what people do.
Yeah. It's like those videos where you see in cities where somebody puts a bike out with a string attached to it.
Right.
Same thing with the fly rod or something.
It's not nice.
It's like, come on.
He's taking it.
There's cameras everywhere now. You're right. You can't trust that there's nobody looking at you because there's cameras everywhere.
Watch out for the man.
Did we wrap that up? I would say, like, if you can put your name or number on your fly box or anything. I know it seems like an old guy thing to do. I still don't do it. I'm not old enough.
No, you're old.
Anyway, I don't do it, but it's a great idea. Many things have been returned to people because they had their name on them. That makes sense.
Maybe my cell phone. Well, that's doomed anyhow.
Doomed.
Yeah, it's wiped.
It's still there, Austin. Right? I mean, that's what bugs you the most. Right?
I told my dad today, and he's like, "You know exactly where it was?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes,
"Yeah."
So if you went back with goggles in 2 months, you think you could find it? I'm like, "Maybe, Dad, but it's going to be underwater for 2 months."
Don't give Vern the GPS coordinates because he'll go get it.
He'd go get it today.
He'll be scuba diving.
Oh my gosh.
Vern will do it.
Oh, yeah.
Does he listen to the podcast?
Sometimes.
Way to go, Vern. Mad respect for you.
Vern.
I mean it. He's the best. He's the coolest dad that I've met in a long time. I mean it.
He's pretty cool.
Oak and Oscar is an American watch company that does things the right way, not the easy way, crafting mechanical timepieces that combine Swiss precision with American know-how. Oak and Oscar was founded in 2015, named after the owner's love of bourbon and his dog, Oscar. Their watches are built to withstand even the most adventurous fly angler. Our very own Austin Dando has been putting his Olmsted to the test since last year. Oak and Oscar is a watch company that loves fly fishing. Visit their website at oakandoscar.com/troutbitten. Mark your time on the water with Oak and Oscar. All right, question 2. Our second question is from Elijah Smith from a message on Instagram. I mean, we got a bunch of questions. Matt, do you want to read this one?
Hey, Troutbitten. Here's a question for your podcast. I saw your article about not using 6X as a crutch, and I hear that you guys like thicker leaders instead of micro. But why make things harder for yourself? You said that you fly fish because it's the best tool. So why not use the best leader and the best tippet? Use whatever gives you the most advantage. Why make it harder?
A loaded question.
That is a loaded question.
Right? That's why I chuckled. I'm like, come on. You like everything, again, is conditional. It's not the best. Is it the best?
Yeah. I mean, I think the amount of times I would think that using 6X tippet is the best tactic for the situation is pretty small.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hesitate to use it if I needed to. But I just don't encounter those situations often at all.
Yeah.
Period.
No, I mean, and we've been through this a lot. We talked about it. We had a whole podcast on tippet. And I don't expect Elijah to have known that, but we've also even had a whole podcast on micro leaders, thin leaders, and, different leader builds. There is nothing. You can't just say, you're a fisherman. You can't say, this is the best. That's kind of the joy of fishing. Right. Nothing is the best. It's just maybe what you like best. What is the best for your waters, perhaps, if you fish a certain way. That's the great thing, man. There's nothing that's the best. So I stand by what he said there. Like we say that, I've said that I fly fish because it's the best tool for the job. It meets the trout on their own terms. I can feed them any way they want to eat. I got to fly for you. And I like that. And so I stand by that. And then the leader build, I use what I think is the best. And these days it's called a thicker leader, but it's our standard mono rig. But again, like I was out there fishing thin and micro thin at least once or twice this week as I was fishing.
Sure.
I just like to try stuff. And that's why I know that it isn't always the best. Yeah. So I don't default to the thinnest line, whether it be my tippet or my butt section, let's say, in a tight line rig. I don't default to the thinnest line all the time. I don't do the same thing with a dry fly and a dry fly leader. I'm not always going to default to the thinnest line. Do you always fish a one weight, guys? Would that be the best idea? No. If you're fishing a fly line, should you just always fish on one weight because it's the thinnest?
Yeah, you hit that one on the head. It's all I don't mind fishing micros, just to practice and see what it's all about. And it's good to have all those tools and understand them when they need to be applied.
I think the understanding is the word there.
Yep.
And you're not going to understand it unless you try it. But if you don't have enough fishing time, don't force yourself to try something you don't want to try either. The more I guide, and I guess the more I'm in this business, this Troutbitten business, and meet more and more people, the more I realize, like, I get a lot more fishing time than most people. Well, that's neat. I feel grateful for that. And we talk about being versatile. And again, trying these things out to see, well, let me just, they're eating on my 6X tippet. What if I went to 4X? Would it make a difference?
Nice.
Most people don't want to do that. And don't.
Right.
If you're only getting out once a week, don't do it.
Right, exactly.
I don't know. If you ever do have the time, do it. And I say, yes, do it. Because that's one of the coolest things is to just learn. What's really working? Why are they eating it? Nothing to do with the tippet. It's how I'm presenting it. It's the water I'm presenting it in and maybe the level. I like those questions, though. Keep them coming. All right, guys, let's get into this topic. Boat fishing, how everything changes. So I said in the intro that there are a few articles on Troutbitten that I've written through the years about floating. Most of them are stories. So I dug back through the archives for one that kept coming to mind. And I'd like to read this short excerpt because I like it. And because I think these few sentences highlight a lot of what I love about floating. And maybe you guys feel the same. All right. This is from a 2016 story titled, "We Watched Daylight Race the River Downstream." In this one, I recounted the last few days of Christmas break, where I was fishing a bunch of days in a row, and how those fishing trips brought me together with my sons and a few good friends, too. So here we go. Not every day was a dawn to dusk affair either, but the best of them was. I caught up with some long-lost friends in the snow. We traded fishing lies and swapped opinions on streamer strategy. We ate smoked meats and cheeses left over from a family Christmas buffet, and we floated down a favorite river. We cast and stripped feathers, polyester craft fur, and EP fibers. We snagged trees and rocks, and we caught a few big trout in the miles of flowing water. We added to the memories of years gone by. A gray winter day with little sun and a lot of wind provided the last page in a final chapter, the last casts of 2016, and we watched daylight race the river downstream. The best thing about a float is seeing miles of water as if in one frame. It's like a film strip that you can take out and hold in your mind for a while. If you've done this long enough, then every rock around every bend carries a memory. The best island channels hold a group of those stories and offer them up as you float by. It's a photo album. The river is a flowing film of your best and worst times on the water, moment by moment passing by. And if you're lucky, you might create a new highlight for the reel. So there you go. Guys, where do you want to start on all this? Why do we like boat fishing? What's different? What do you want to talk about?
That was a good write up there. I enjoyed listening to that again.
I like reading back through some of my stuff from 7 years ago now.
Sure.
And when I remix them, I call them a remix on most Fridays. I like going back and kind of correcting some things that could have been better. And Austin, a couple typos,
Oh yeah, I like your reference to film there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as you're so affectionate of my film camera, the lore, the romanticism of the fact has made it into your story. So, must not hate it that much.
I wouldn't take it so literally. I just mean movie, man.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with that.
Nope. Just saying. Got a lot of memories on a river. And while we float down the river, it's the same. It's very similar to wading. Every time I wade a piece of water that is familiar to me, I get a flood of memories coming back.
Sure.
You guys too?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And they're, with the floating aspect of it, I think those memories are just different. And I think part of it is because you're mostly in this confined vessel for an extended period of time. And unlike wade fishing, where you may be close enough to holler at your buddy or chat with your buddy, that communication and teamwork that happens when you're in a boat is undeniable, right? And it's very different from wade fishing, in my opinion. And usually, right? Am I right by saying that? Usually when you wade fish, you spread out a little more.
Sure.
And you may regroup, but that boat float, you're in that boat together. And it's often, there's antics, right? And there's stories to be told, but it resonates in my memory, slightly different, all good memories, but just different compared to those long wade days with my buddies.
I feel like that's where you really get to know your fishing friends in a deeper way.
Sure.
I like that teamwork word. That's what it is too. Because, one guy's on the oars and at least one guy's up front. If you got a 3-man, there might be, somebody in the back too. Yeah. It is teamwork, and you got to say, "Hey, get closer to the bank." Isn't that nice when people get you closer to the bank, Austin?
when you ask them to, and they say,
when you ask them, and the guide says, "Okay,"
instead of looks blankly and
we cannot do that.
Not possible.
But really, that's good because you really affect the success of everybody else in your boat that rower does, right? And sure, you can fish with a buddy and he can blow through the water above you and kind of, screw you up for a little bit. But really with boat fishing, that teamwork, I mean, if your rower's not spot on, then it's going to affect everybody in that boat from a catching standpoint.
Yeah.
We talk about fishing buddies, right? I don't know if we mentioned that fishing buddy in that podcast, but I have, particular boat buddies, right? That they get a call when the hatch is going and maybe some don't just because of their rowing capabilities.
That's true too.
That's a good qualifier.
I love that aspect of it. Maybe the most. It forces you into this closeness. You're 5 feet. You're 5 feet away from your friend for however many hours. That's another thing too. There's a commitment to floating. If you get into a river and you're just wading, and you and your buddy go and whatever, you travel 30 minutes or an hour to get there, and the fishing just sucks, and you could go till I don't know 11 o'clock or noon, and you go, man, half a day's gone by. You get lunch, everybody has a beer. You go, you know what? Let's bail. It depends, right? But it might be somebody or maybe a couple people are like, yeah, let's just take off. Fishing sucks today. Well, in a boat, you don't have that option. You need to get to the takeout, wherever that shuttle vehicle is. You got to get down there. So there's a commitment that I enjoy as well. And if you have that full day, usually it takes a full day. Is that fair? Or I guess you can do a half day.
Yeah,
sure.
You're committed to a time frame. And you're not getting out before you get to the takeout. And I think that's neat too, because you can't give up on it.
Yeah,
I guess you could just coast down the middle of the river, but none of us ever really give up on it. You go, you know what? Keep trying this, try that. Get out of the boat and try the next thing or whatever.
Yeah.
There's that inevitable competition that resonates in the boat too, no matter how casual you want that day to be. If the dude in the front of the boat's sticking fish, and you're not, it pisses you off. And you have that elation when you pick up that fish out of the net and you can look into the front seat of that dude and he hasn't caught any. He's pissed. Yeah. He can't be happy for you. He's mad. I see it all the time.
Yeah. And if you I have a 2-man. I have a cataract that Pat sold me. Oh, Pat, I won't tell you the price, but Pat lost money on it. Pat took pity on me, basically, and he sold me the trailer and the boat for like less than what the trailer was worth, right? And so I still have that. I've replaced the pontoons on that, and that's a cool boat, and I stick with my cataract. I like what it is. And anyway, that's my boat, but it's a 2-man. It's good because it's 2-man because you can get into some places that a 3-man can't, but I got 2 boys, so it'd be kind of neat to have that, that third seat. And like you're talking about, Matt, then you get twice the fishing in. You can figure out perhaps, you get twice the data. That's fair.
Right.
And then you got twice the friendships. There's a neat camaraderie between 3 people versus 2.
Yeah.
I think for me, man, it's those friendships. I've said so often that I prefer to fish alone. And what I mean is I'd like to drive to the river with you guys, and then I'll say, I'll see you.
Sure.
When we get there, I'm going downstream. Hey, when do you want to meet for lunch?
Right.
And then in a boat, it's totally different. Let's work together. Let's make this happen.
And I'm with you on that, Dom. With the typical, I like to fish alone. It's not even, it's just who I am, right? It's who sometimes we are as anglers, that I like to go out there, what we do for a living. And, we interact with people all the time.
It's hard to be around people.
That's sure. Right. And it's fun when I get out, it's my time, and I focus on it and lose my mind for 3 hours, or 4 hours if I'm lucky, 8 hours, and I look forward to that. But it's also important, I think, and we've talked about this. I always try to encourage more of that group trip, because it is when you're in that, I'll be the first to say I can get annoyed quickly if someone's late or they're not on that, agenda because it's fishing. But sometimes it's good for me to have that pushback and say, you know what? It's not my agenda today. This is a
take it easy.
Group of buddies. Take it easy. Enjoy the food and the stories and what fishing is all about, really.
I was just gonna say lunchtime, right? Like if you're wading, you're not making a big deal out of lunch. You might have some beef jerky,
not at all,
right? But if you're on a boat, more often than not, we kind of make a big deal out of lunch.
Yeah, you could bring that stuff. If you're waiting, we're not going to hike back to the truck to break out a grill. We're going to stay where we are and keep working upstream. But when you're floating down the river, you can have the grill or whatever along for the ride, no problem.
Yeah, and there's nothing better than sitting there, looking at fun scenery, and usually it's fairly quiet where our floats take us, and really just enjoy that, whether you're grilling a burger or heating chili up on the stove and being out in nature, right, with two of your good buddies fishing. It's hard to beat that.
Burgers, chili, like it, you can't do better than that.
I got some really good chili recipes. Is it Jeff's Chicken? I always mess.
Oh yeah, baby.
Yeah,
Jeff's Chicken. That's a Troutbitten special.
That's a Troutbitten.
So when
special.
Pat and I were, Pat owned the boat first, and when Pat and I were floating a lot, he did not want to make a big deal out of lunch. And if he was here, I think he would agree with that. He's like, nah, just keep fishing. But I bought a grill from like Walmart, just a simple. I started bringing steaks, usually steaks, and not
ribs,
not hot dogs, because that's not inspiring enough to stop the boat. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's good.
Get to the head or the tail of some island, park for 30 minutes, maybe even 45 minutes, and we're gonna do a nice lunch, and we're gonna really make it worthwhile. That's all. And I've been like that about lunch on a boat for a long time. I guess. I remember Trevor brought ribeyes, and they were thick too. Anyway, Trevor had a hell of a lunch there. I remember exactly where we were. I had brought a really good ciabatta, like a really nice loaf of bread. Those kinds of things matter. My buddy Philip brought some venison, some really nice cuts of that on that same river. And once again, a good chunk of bread. So I'm not the type that's like, I'm going to bring a table and then this silverware.
Tablecloth.
Right, and a tablecloth and this bottle of wine. I'm not doing that stuff.
Right.
But I do like a nice chunk of meat, and I don't know. I don't bring silverware, but like we'll take a good chunk of bread and like rip it. That's my thing, right?
Yeah,
I say
like
this is Troutbitten. We don't have the amenities, but we'll have a nice cut of meat.
You like a good
you.
beer too, though, right?
Absolutely,
of course,
right?
The cooler's got some good beer.
So those things, you can't do it when you're wading downstream.
No.
And
do you drink when you're wading, or is it?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more I don't know why. I kind of just when I'm wade fishing, I don't think about it as much. But when I'm in that boat, it doesn't lose. I'm at the gas station. I'm getting the best beer or the brewery beer, filling up a growler. And then there's nothing. I don't know. I can't even row without having a beer in the cup holder. Like
I know.
I need it.
I will say, by the time I get to the takeout, I want to only have, let's say, 2 beers. Well, 2 beers that are
like
IPAs, right?
Broken heels.
You're then not being a team member then.
Yeah, that's right. If I have 3 or 4, I'm not a team member.
Right.
I'm with you. And that itself changes the experience.
Sure.
Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer. Precision Fly and Tackle is a family-owned business with a passion for the outdoors and a sense of adventure. They are anglers who enjoy every moment spent on the water with family and friends. Precision Fly and Tackle carries the widest selection of Euro rods, reels, lines, leaders, flies, and accessories. From the beginner to the advanced angler, Precision Fly and Tackle can outfit every angler, no matter the budget. Visit them online at precisionflyandtackle.com. Then use code TROUTBITTEN10, that's the number 10, for 10% off your order. Gear up with Precision Fly and Tackle for your next adventure.
Do you ever find your if you fish enough with your boat buddies that you find your roles whether it's the guy that's putting the anchor in the boat, getting the rods ready, like the whole thing ends up, we're going back to camaraderie and teamwork. Even in the boat, I have my one buddy, he rows first all the time.
Okay.
And his thing is he likes other people to figure it out. So then he rows, lets the two guys fishing dial it in. And then he's like, you put 3 or 4 fish in the net and he's like, okay, your turn to row. And then he's fishing your rod and your rig and smiling.
That's great. Because there is something to figure out. Again, multiple anglers, multiple data points too.
Sure. Well, and the drifts are just different, right? The approach is different. I mean, you're fishing downstream most of the time, right? Where typically when you're wade fishing, you're fishing upstream. So it's different because you're not standing on 2 feet dissecting a run and being able to like absorb what's happening out there. You're fast and furious.
It is fast.
And you have to almost look, 10 yards down, like you're casting, but you're always looking at your fly, but you're looking at the next, where do I pick up and drop those flies again? And some of the best boat anglers I've ever been with are those guys that are thinking 2 steps ahead of the boat, right? And positioning those flies in the right lane, a couple boat lengths up to set themselves up for a dead drift. Especially in water that's has pockets and runs. And I talk a lot about, one of my favorite rivers that floats, the Madison River, right? And it's made up of all kinds of different currents and boulders, and you constantly got to be picking those flies up and slapping them if you're going to have an effective day out on the water. So it's different in that way for sure.
I always say, like, don't get greedy. You don't want to fish that one spot too much because now you're fishing behind the boat. And you got to know what your next target is.
Yeah, and oftentimes we get one chance at those spots. You're saying, Matt and Dom, it's fast. And when we're moving and we're covering water, if that's the mission, it's even more crucial to be looking ahead because you're going to get one cast at it. You're going to have to put it exactly where you want it. And if you miss, well, you better just leave it there anyhow. Because if you try to take it out and cast again, well, you're already past it.
Yeah.
It changes the whole thing. It's like
very good.
I don't know, put some pressure on to perform and be accurate.
It's a neat pressure.
Yeah, it is fun.
How about if you could admit, let's say you're fishing dry flies, right? And let's talk about tactics in a second, but say you're fishing dry flies and you have a riser back there, maybe 3 risers in that one pocket up against the bank, and you get that one miss, but you can communicate with the guy in the oars and say, whoa, back row, hold me. And that's where, again, that teamwork comes in. And all of a sudden, he's trying to back row hard enough that he can keep you in one spot and you can get multiple shots at all 3 of those risers. And you're probably going to catch at least one of them. I love that stuff.
Yeah, because you feel rewarded as that rower. You earn that fish just as much as the dude that put it in, right?
Both caught it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Do you guys like to row or fish more?
I like to fish.
Yeah, I like to fish more.
That's fair. Honestly, maybe
I don't mind rowing.
Maybe it's because I have kids too, and my kids are old enough. Matt, yours are younger, but oh man, there's nothing I love more. I mean it than putting my kids in a position where they can catch fish.
Sure.
Same with my dad and a couple other people I've had in my boat. Yeah, that rowing. I love that rowing activity just as much as I love fishing, and I mean it. That's why though it's that close relationship.
Sure.
So I don't guide, Troutbitten, none of us guide on our local rivers because the boat won't fit on our local rivers. Here in our region of Pennsylvania, there are no floatable rivers. If they're really high, you can sometimes float them, but that almost always comes with mud. That's another thing to think about, guys. Like, you can't float everything. I mean, there are rafts these days that are so small that they'll go in almost any water. Let's address that, guys. Like, is there some water that you think we shouldn't be floating?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
there's more boats than ever in our region, and probably across the country for that matter. But it's always been my opinion that if the river is at a wadeable flow around here for the size they are, you shouldn't have your boat in it. Because you can't go around people when they're waiting. It's not like out west where you have a massive piece of water. You can go down the middle. You can avoid other anglers. You can hold off and give them their space. You can't do that around here.
Right.
So unless that the river is at a flow where it's not possible to wade, then I don't really think you should be on it.
I'm with you.
Yeah. That's, out here, the rivers are built to float.
Yeah. Different.
They're just big. There's boat launches. The best way to approach them is oftentimes a boat. And when you have to question the best method to catch fish, and it's not floating. And what I mean by that is there's some of these rivers that just, if you're floating down to these fish, like, and it's one hole and there's guys waiting on the left side of the hole and everybody's trying to target the same hole. Like, what's the point in being in a boat? There's no point. You're lazy and you don't want to wade is what it is.
Yeah, very true.
And I don't think that sets up success for anyone, right? Even the boat angler isn't gonna. Now, like you said, Dom, if the water's high, okay, throwing streamers against the bank during high water, I can buy into that because there's not going to be as many wade guys out there. But your rivers just aren't meant to float. I mean, it's as simple as that. They're not set up to float.
That's right. And one of the reasons there isn't a whole lot of floating or boating content on Troutbitten is because we don't do it nearly as much as wading. Also, we've been somewhat secretive. We should talk about that in a second.
Yeah,
but
that's on purpose.
Right, because I don't want to give the impression that there's floatable water around here. There's not. There's no good water on here to consistently put your boat. And I'm telling you, I don't care if you have a flycraft, the smallest flycraft out there, there is no good water around here in our region to put your boat and not run into other anglers. Austin, I like what you said. If you're going to be running into other anglers and asking them or almost demanding them to get out of your way, that's wrong. Like, don't do that to other people. I was on one of our favorite rivers, Austin, and I had two boats come right down through me. They were like the same boat. They were a little weird.
Really?
It was like a small little raft, and they were guiding, and there was one guide and one client in each boat. I almost said something like, hey, you shouldn't be on here. That boat's too big for here. That doesn't work right here. We don't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't say it. I kept my mouth shut, but I felt like saying it because it wasn't right.
And the thing is, when someone else sees it, like if there's other anglers with the other mindset that, oh, I can float this. I never thought about that.
Yes.
Well, then that person starts doing it, and then the next, and then the next, and all of a sudden it becomes a floating river. And you're like, no, that was never the intention.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that comes to your mind is, they get all you think, right? If you're a casual angler, you look at that boat and you're like, oh man, they just cherry picked all the good water, right? And that's not the case there.
No,
there's not much. There's one stretch maybe, that you might be able to get that's real hard to access. And that's it. Like, you're going to keep running into people. There's not a float out there that's necessarily conducive to this truly wilderness experience. That's right. It just doesn't exist.
That's true too. And that brings up this question, guys. Do you think your fishing opportunities or your catching opportunities really are better from a boat or while you're wading? Or is it that easy? I know everything's conditional.
I think no question wade fishing provides the best numbers in most situations.
You're the expert, right?
Yeah.
You've got one. Oh my.
Numbers is my main priority. No, but seriously, I very rarely have as good of a boat day as I do on foot. And that's just a reality of the experience. Nothing wrong. But if I had my choice, I'd be intimately dissecting the water in front of me as opposed to, one cast and that's all you get.
I know. Same here.
I think it could depend on the river too. Like if you're in a river that has long stretches of flats and then, beautiful riffles and then long stretches of flats where maybe you spend a lot of time skipping water to get to the next set of riffles, that can be more set up for a boat where if you can drift through fish streamers through some of that less productive water, then anchor up and get out of the boat and nymph the riffles and do it that way and then jump back in and go downstream. That can be an advantage depending on how your river's built.
Sure.
Yeah. If you're not a good wader, then you're going to love floating. Right? Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's a fair thing to say. What you just said, Austin, is one of my favorite things to do. I mean, you float for a while and you hit all the stuff you can while you're floating down to the next island, perhaps. Yeah. And you get out at the island and then do what we all call run and gun. That's everybody calls it that, right? And you get out. You fish, but here's the thing. You got to keep a cap on it. You say, everybody,
Yeah, right.
We're meeting back here.
Sure.
In 45 minutes. At 1:35, we're getting back in the boat. Or else somebody's like, I got to fish this spot down here. I got to fish that. Anyway, run and gun's fun.
It's true.
And it's totally possible if you stay on a schedule. Because, yes, you have to get to the takeout.
Sure.
You'd like to get there before dark, Although we all have stories about being after dark at the takeout.
Yep.
Those are sketchy
Just too
nights.
much run and gun. Austin wouldn't get back in the damn boat.
It's too busy catching them.
Sure you were. Snagging them.
Back to the numbers thing, it's definitely not my preference, and I think waiting's more effective. But I will say there's definitely situations, especially out here, that there's no question the boat's the right way to approach the water, right? And it's big and it's fast, and you're not going to wade. When you can only wade 2 feet off the bank, right? That's not the best way to fish that water. You can. The better way to approach it, though, is with a drift boat. There's no question.
And that's what you mean by the right way. I mean, the best way to get the water that you literally cannot get to on your feet.
Correct. It's impossible.
That's neat.
Yeah.
It feels powerful, right? You're like, oh
yeah.
I'm out here.
And there's there's a chunk of time out here. If you didn't have a boat, you wouldn't fish much. I mean, that's just a fact. The water comes up.
Because your runoff.
We know every year the water is going to be high for 6-7 weeks, but when it gets clear, clearer or tea green or whatever you want to call it, boy, that's some fun boat fishing, right? That water's so fierce it pushes fish to the bank. That's some of my favorite times of the year, but it's the right way to do it, right? It's the right approach if you want to continually catch fish. And so it expands my season a little bit, and it's just the right tactic.
Some of those rivers that you're beside, Matt, or close by, are so big. You're saying you almost need a boat. That's why you have one, right?
Yeah, right.
And now you're all about the what is it? The hoppers, or what are you on the?
Wait, what? Right now, pseudocleons?
No, you basically told me you bought a boat
for salmon flies.
Salmon flies, yeah.
Salmon flies, hoppers.
You bought a boat basically to fish for salmon flies.
Yeah, I mean, I think during high water, the stonefly I really enjoy, that big dry fly on the banks. And it's fun, and it truly is the only way to fish it, right? But it's kind of you get into that niche, then you're like, okay, you're not going to see anybody out there but the boats. And the water, the guy that usually has the best cast is getting rewarded with the fish because it's so fast. Like when you have a 5,000 CFS current pushing, and you told the story before about, back rowing, like out here, that's real hard up until August.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And you're kind of just holding on. You're holding on, and you're going. And we can, no joke, when I get on that water for the first time, when it's getting ready to do the dry fly, stone fly thing, you could easily float 22 miles in about 7 hours.
Wow, that's
6-7 hours. That's
moving.
Big river. Think about that. I mean, that's just a big, gnarly river.
And as you're saying, you can only back row so much. So all of your opportunities, even if you're shooting to the bank, you better have that right cast the first time. You're not getting a second shot.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, it's real fair. That whole experience, it's a new, the lifelong sport, right? It's just another, we're talking about the pros now, being in a boat. And I'm in a region that is very welcoming of drift boats. As it should be, but it's almost a new skill, and we haven't talked tactics completely, but it's something that I thought I was knowledgeable before I moved out here, but really not until I got out here did I kind of take it to the next level of, okay, this is big Western drift boat fishing. And your region, maybe not, but there's places in PA that offer some cool float fishing, right? Like we know
we travel a bit to get to those,
and you can get them, and so you can get that experience. And and I think that's what guys sometimes, that's what they settle on with these drift boats or the waters that provide that experience, because they enjoy, whether it was what we said, they don't like to wade, or that camaraderie. There's a lot of differences there that's attractive.
So what do you think you've learned, Matt? You said it took you a while to kind of learn those things. Like, I don't know. What's one of those things?
Yeah. So one of the most important things I learned, and this is the time I like to float the most, is now, early May through late July, I would say. And it's to shorten my, I'm a big, dry fly dropper guy. That's kind of what I like to target. And so one of the things I learned out here was to really shorten my dropper. And part of that's because you can't back row. You hang up.
You're not going back to get your flies.
Right. People, but I saw it. I was breaking off. I'd have a heavy, heavy Troutbitten super fly that one of my big dry flies could suspend. And I'd be like, I'd be breaking off more than I was fishing. And so I learned real quick that the fish don't mind a short dropper. You just have to stick to it. And then it's easier to get both of those flies in the right current seam. So it's almost counterproductive of what,
Nice.
I thought originally I wanted to get my flies to the bottom drag. Now, last night's a good example. I was fishing the Mother's Day caddis hatch and 18 inches max, right, on my dropper. And it was a soft tackle, and we were talking about the emergers, and Bill was texting us. He caught 10 on emergers. I'm like, I did pretty similar to that on an emerger dropper, but it's that confidence, until you target and cover water a lot. And you said it's one of the advantages of boat fishing, right? I just said I can cover 22 miles of water. Sticking to that limited dropper length, I think, is something that I learned the hard way out here.
Dry dropper is definitely popular because it makes a lot of sense. I always say if you're going to dry dropper or fish under an indicator, you have to kind of decide, am I going to try to get deep and surrender to the fact that I'm going to hang up once in a while, or am I going to try to ride over all those rocks and just get longer drifts?
Right. Yeah.
It's a great theory. Yep.
You could say it's a fine line, but I try not to ride the line. I try to decide, am I trying to ride shallow, where seriously I'm hardly hitting anything, or am I going to get down in there?
Sure.
It high flows, like you're saying, Matt. Nope. You're not back rowing, so you'll be losing a lot of flies if you take the second option.
Right. And if you're with, inexperienced anglers, that's really not what you want, right?
No, right.
Imagine having two beginner clients in the boat.
Sure.
I mean, it's just
That's
brutal.
frustrating for anybody who's nobody likes hanging out, breaking off. Nope. When we're waiting, we will often go get our flies, but again, you can't go get them in a lot of situations.
The landscape is changing for trout anglers. No doubt you've already noticed another truck at your favorite access point and seen more anglers on the water. For those looking for new challenges and fishing opportunities, Trout Routes has the data to help you avoid the crowds and explore new public water. Trout Routes has mapped more than 50,000 trout streams across the country with curated, detailed maps of public land and access points. Trout Routes has developed integrated and interactive data, putting the tools in your hands to research new water and help you navigate in the wild to know exactly where you stand in the current. It's still up to you to find those deep pools and undercuts, but Trout Routes helps you get on the water, connecting you with resources like fly shops and stream gauges for trout water across the country. Download Trout Routes in the App Store today and visit troutroutes.com to learn more. For over a decade, Smith Creek has helped anglers just like you to free up your hands, hold your gear within easy reach, and keep our waters clean. Smith Creek's family of patented accessories are tested guide tough and backed by good old-fashioned customer service. Crafted from rugged materials like anodized marine-grade aluminum and UV-resistant nylon, Smith Creek products are hand-assembled with pride and built to last. To stay up to date on their latest specials and new product releases, be sure to follow Smith Creek on Instagram at SmithCreekNZ. Quality you can depend on from a brand you can trust. That's Smith Creek.
So that's dry flies and a nymphs. I mean, I love fishing streamers from a boat. That's my first option. I love fishing streamers. Matt, we all know that you're like anti-streamer.
Sure.
You think it's not fly fishing. I'm just kidding. Matt's never said that.
No.
But why don't you love? Do you fish them from a boat?
In a boat. That's it.
Okay.
Back to to me, some of these rivers are so big that nymphing is just, you get one drift. Right, over this massive run. And I truly don't think it's the right approach. Like if the fish are all tucked to the banks because of high water, different story. But if they're spreading out a little bit, I truly believe that streamer fishing can be the best way to approach that river.
From that boat.
And to your point, you get that upper vantage point. And I don't know anyone that doesn't enjoy watching these fish flash and attack on a boat. To me, it adds that excitement where maybe I don't see it as good when I'm wade fishing, and I just don't have confidence, right, in that approach as much when it comes to wade fishing. But when I'm in a boat, I'll sling some streamers and work on my game as it needs work. But I don't mind it then.
You talk about the excitement of streamer fishing, and people will often say there's nothing more exciting than watching them eat your dry fly. And I would argue against that. And I'd say it's even more exciting when you're manipulating the streamer. You're animating the streamer and trying to tantalize those fish like, hey, come and eat it. It's alive. Come and eat it. And you're moving it. And then you see them charging.
Just all of a sudden.
Eat it, and they eat it harder, like faster and harder than they eat your dry fly. Yeah, all of a sudden. And that is even more exciting. I don't think there's any more exciting thing or any more exciting eat in fly fishing than a streamer bite. And I love doing it from a boat.
And when you're in that boat, right, and chances are it could be a little different with low flows, but you missed it, right? And traditionally the boat's like, right, and there's no going back. Most times, I understand that sometimes you could pull the boat over and try to re-catch that fish, but especially out here, it's gone. Like you're way past that fish already, and it's you have that feeling in your stomach, like I one that got away, right?
Yep, that was your chance for the day.
Austin, what's your favorite tactic from a boat?
I would agree. I mean, for the amount that I get to fish from a boat, I really do enjoy fishing streamers and covering water.
Yeah,
kind of like we're talking about now, because it's a special occasion for myself, and for I think you too, Dom. It's not like we're in boats all the time. So when I get the chance to fish differently like that, and cover a bunch of water and fish banks, I love to do that.
You take multiple rods?
Sometimes, yeah. Like for the running gun approach, I think it's especially helpful because I could have a streamer rod on the boat, and that could be 70% of the fishing that day. But when I get out, I can have that different weight rod to go nymph or do whatever in the riffles. So rod storage is really important. We didn't touch on that, so that's a good point too.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, isn't that nice when you can have one more rod?
It's nice when you're allowed to take more than one rod on a boat.
Yep.
I like having, two. I don't necessarily need three, but my nymph rod / dry fly rod and then a streamer rod, it doesn't have to be all that particular, but I do love that option, especially when you're just going through a flat stretch and you go streamer, streamer, streamer. Ooh, let me fish dries, or dry dropper right there. I don't like nymphing from a boat. That's not fair. I don't like it as much from a boat. I nymph so often when we're wading. I probably nymph 60, 70% of the time when we're wading. So I love that opportunity to do all the things we're talking about, all the advantages that a boat gives you for streamers and dry flies. One target after the next. I mean, you guys think you catch bigger fish overall by the end of a float than you might on a wade trip, or no? Matt's shaking his head.
No, I don't.
Depends on where you... Yeah, I was going to say, it's depending on what you're floating, because we often try to target maybe some larger fish rivers when we float.
But maybe it doesn't, Austin. Maybe if we get out or we just wade a section of those rivers that we float, we'd be catching bigger fish anyway.
No, I mean overall, like compared to all wading versus all floating.
Fair.
It would be biased towards where you float. But I would agree with Matt. In general, as a rule, I don't think you just catch you catch bigger fish from a boat.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, Matt?
No, just, when you're on, and I'm specifically envisioning a river out here that's big, that I could, it could take me forever to cover the water on foot, where, maybe in that realm I could see you're covering more water, right? You're giving yourself more opportunities. If you're approaching the water with a streamer specifically, and I could get more big fish in that scenario, right? But it's basically just because I'm covering more water. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
But lower numbers in general, right?
Right, but you're covering so much water in a boat. Like I said, there's some rivers out here I'd much prefer. And if you guys came out, I'd be like, nope, we're going to go in drift boat. It's the best way to fish it.
I got to get in your boat. What's the name of your boat? You name it?
No, the old one, well, I had to hide before, and that's just the legend, but that's kind of their company name. Yeah. Right. I got an R.O. DeVille, and I don't really have a nickname yet, but Dom, when you were talking about the kids and stuff,
yeah,
I hope one day, when you get in the boat with the girls and they'll set the nickname up for it, hopefully.
Like that.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to those days. I think I was going to tell you need to invest in that third seat because those will be memories your boys really, really cherish, I think, with dad on a river. So
I know
you gotta invest in that.
I think the pontoons are long. I think I have 13-foot pontoons. If I would even extend the frame just a bit, I could have a back seat.
Sure.
And my uncle is good at welding. I guess I could just get a brand new frame, but seriously.
Somebody send us a boat.
Dom, do you feel like, when you're in a boat back there, that it can expose maybe things that you don't want exposed?
Yes. That's one of the reasons I've kept some of our floating stuff off of Troutbitten. There's probably a lot of people who are surprised that I do have a boat. We don't do it around here. Again, in our area right here, there's no real good water to float. But you can go all across Pennsylvania and of course, other places. It's harder to be secretive, right? It's harder to keep things private.
Yeah.
You're taking a picture of a boat. Well, if you're taking pictures and sharing it, which is part of what Troutbitten is, we like to share our experiences. If you're taking a video, it's harder to keep it secret. And then I usually am catching bigger fish on a boat because of some of the places I'm fishing. That might draw more attention. I'm not saying you'd have to take pictures of it all, but yeah, Matt, I think it's harder to keep it private.
Sure.
What about you?
That makes sense in that area, right? I mean, out here it's different.
Yeah.
It's everybody's
common.
floating. I mean, it's
common.
Honestly, wade fishermen are the outlier in a way, right? And that's just because of the time of year, and the time of the year people come, the water's still not too friendly in most waterways to wade fish. Now that changes. That's why people come out here the second, third week in July, right?
Yeah.
And get their trip in August because that water does become more friendly. So I don't think there's much of a sensitivity that can be exposed with that. But I completely understand where you're coming from because I would think the same. My home water back there, if I was in a boat holding up big fish, I mean, or you knew where I was at and all the things, it was pretty easy to know where I was.
Yeah, very easy. There are only so many waters in Pennsylvania that are going to be floatable. And somebody like Dell could easily identify wherever anybody is.
Oh, yeah. I don't even think you need his level of knowledge. If you have a half decent idea of what's around in the state,
right,
you're going to be able to figure it out. Or even if you're just going on social media, let's just say you post a video on your way there with the boat behind you.
Yeah.
Sure. We know where you're going now. And now when I see that next big fish picture you post, I know where you caught it.
So you just...
I don't want to pay attention to it, but I do.
Yeah. We have a new business venture there because AI is booming. So we can just make the AI feature that drums up some creek everybody knows. And that's the background for all of Troutbitten's photos.
You're floating this little brookie stream.
Yeah. Or how about somewhere in Iceland?
Yeah, that's right. So I always say there's wading and then there's boating. It really is almost two different things like we're talking about. You have many options available to you when you're floating, many different options available to you, obviously, when you're wading. Like you said, Matt, it took you a while to sort of dial in or maybe rein in some of your expectations or your old habits to now being in a boat.
Sure.
And then when you get out of the boat, I'm sure you jump right back into your wading things. But it does. Different things are possible. We just quickly touched on tactics. But I don't nymph much from a boat because I don't love the presentations that I get. The boat keeps going. And when I'm nymphing, I usually want the nymph to get pretty low.
Sure.
I mean, on foot. when I'm wading.
I agree with that.
And it's hard for me to kind of accept that drift. It's just, it's a foot underneath the water. Well, usually around here, they won't eat that.
Right.
So I don't like nymphing so much from a boat. I'll do it when I kind of have to, maybe sometimes when I just want to. I don't know. It's all different. So many of the things that we talked about really do change. And we love it. We love it for what it is. I wouldn't want to do it every day, you know?
No, true story on that. That's a good mix, though. It's fun, and it grows your game in a different way. So if you have the opportunity and you live in a place that's conducive to it and it's appropriate, you know, it's definitely a fun hobby to get into, but it's also expensive. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Or we didn't even talk about that. I mean, you get a bunch of crap that comes with the boat fishing.
We used to say people are really into boating, and then other people are really into fishing.
Sure.
Especially if you own the boat, you spend a lot of time. That's what you're getting at.
That's exactly right. If you bought the boat, you now have to use it. Right? You got to get your money's worth.
That's right. And you got to keep
it up. You feel obligated to be in the boat when you fish.
Set it up and all the stuff that comes with boating. It's like you're boating or you're fishing. Which one are you really doing?
Oh, yeah.
Anything else, guys?
Yeah, one other difference that, Dom, when you asked me that question, what's different? I know a hard side boat is much different than the pontoon or raft boat, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was rowing a Otter 130 back in PA, and it's, you have the flexibility to bump off rocks and whatnot, and drift boats are completely different, way more sensitive. They're much more friendly to fish out of, but there's just a lot more wariness in rapids. Things can go south. I can't tell you how many drift boats I've seen sunk out here.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, lots.
Never getting them back, kind of sunk.
Never getting them back. And it's sketchy, right?
Like Austin's phone.
Yeah,
she going.
There's some river souvenirs out on all these rivers, because you can rent a boat, and some people that rent a drift boat that only rode a raft. They should think twice about jumping in one out here. It can be sketchy because once the tip of that boat, right? Once it goes in, you're done.
Oh yeah.
Once it starts taking water on, and the low sides skiff like boats are very popular right now because of the wind. It's windy here all the time.
Sure.
So the lower sides make it more friendly to row. And when you're in the river every day guiding, you want that boat, right?
Oh, that would add up.
Yeah.
Right? Those low sides, even a foot lower or 6 inches maybe lower on each side. There's a lot there.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this is another one of those topics where we're leaving a lot on the table. And maybe we could even do a full skills series on different things about tactics out of a boat, different types of boats. Again, advantages, disadvantages, strategies, fishing out of a boat. But we're just kind of high leveling the whole thing. The skiff, it is popular, right?
Very popular.
The wind is a big deal. I don't even understand how, if the raft is, pretty low to the water, why does it get pushed around like that?
It's just that wide surface area where a drift boat has that Mackenzie style bottom, and it just floats with the river more, where there's more surface area on that wide raft.
On the raft.
It's all touching, right? It's all touching. It's just a little sloppier.
Sloppy is right.
Yeah. And I see guys, and they drove across country and they plop that flycraft in, and I'm just like, this guy's, he's screwed. This wind's gonna come it's gonna come high at 11 o'clock, and they're gonna get blown all over this river.
The wind.
Yeah. It's because it's not heavy enough, right? I mean, it took me a while to realize, well, why is everyone in this town driving around with drift boats? Like, what is it? Everybody's got drift boats. I know why they have drift boats. It's a real, it's what you want when you're fishing here regularly.
Cuts through. Austin, do you have anything else, young love?
I think that's great. Great wrap-up.
He thinks it's great. All right, there it is. What we love about fishing from a boat. It's the companionship and teamwork, along with the effort and commitment required to get down the river. It's about lunch and friendly banter as much as the novel approach to tactics and the pure advantage of accessing more water. From the put-in to the takeout, boating changes everything. It's a wonderful way to learn the river and to connect with good friends. All right, young love, Mr. Austin Dando, will you read us out?
Sure will. So remember, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Troutbitten website hosts over 1,000 articles with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and the tags too. Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel, now featuring the Troutbitten Tip Series, the Fish and Film Series, and the Troutbitten Flybox, all in collaboration with Wild Media. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a comment, because that really helps. Till next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the water.
Never get in a boat with sloop.
Come on, man.
Oh, yeah.
You know they're listening to you right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like Austin's phone.
She gone.
Jumping in one out here.
Just calling you out again.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving it there. I'm taking it. It's mine now. Finders keepers, baby.
So that's what you tell yourself.
Thanks for
Outro.